Amy, welcome. Amy Below, sorry. You also teach at U.S. constitutional law at Université Paris-Nanterre. You worked in the U.S. government for a very long time, some 16 years. I want to get back to those comments we saw from President Trump earlier today. Have you, in all of your career, seen anything like that? A U.S. president seeming to announce his win before it was called, talking about disenfranchising votes that were legally cast?
No, I haven't. It does seem to be that he wants to take away the democratic rights of the American people, which is very disconcerting, to say the least, and disturbing from our perspective as American citizens.
How are you are a representative of Democrats abroad. How are Democrats outside the United States viewing this election?
With a great amount of concern. We love our home country desperately and want to see it reflect the values and the ideals that it should reflect. And so we've been getting out the vote like crazy with lots of get out the vote events. Here in France, Democrats Abroad France has done a remarkable job of assisting people with getting out their ballots, all people. Doesn't matter whether they're Republican or Democrat. We want everybody to vote, and we want everybody's votes to be counted. And that's really our push, especially because we all have to vote as mail-in voters, just like the military overseas. We have been very, very active in making sure that all states are able to count all ballots. The election is not over until every single ballot is counted.
And I think that's what's really interesting in what you said. Of course, there are a lot of military voters. To hear the president of the United States say he might disenfranchise votes that were voted by the military just seems extraordinary to me.
It's crazy, quite frankly, that you would want to try to disenfranchise American citizens at all, and especially this president who tries to tout his support of the military, wanting to disenfranchise so many of them. It is, and I keep using this word because it's disturbing.
Amy, I'm sure that it's your case as well, Doug's case as well. We've been expats a long time. I voted in many presidential elections since I've been in France. It seems for many expat voters, myself included, that many times our votes just didn't matter. They were counted perhaps in the last little closest race. Do you think expat voters and their votes might actually count for something this time around?
Absolutely. I think they actually count for something every single time. I can hark back to the election of Al Franken, or various other situations where, in fact, the expat vote was the margin of victory. I do think that they count a lot more than people think that they do, and I especially think that this year they will count even more, given the fact that at least early indicators, we don't know how many people actually voted from abroad just yet, but in terms of those who registered to do so from abroad, our numbers have broken records this time around, so we're really, really pleased.
Right, broken records like we saw in the United States, 100 million people voting ahead of Election Day. That's something that's never been seen before. What do you think has been pushing people to vote early this time around?
Well, there's a variety of things, including, of course, the COVID pandemic, which is really getting people to understand that they really don't want to be in large crowds. They'd like to vote from the safety of their home and the comfort of their home. And as you said, the vote counts are amazing. I was just looking at the latest vote totals. We're already over 134 million votes cast, which is more than in the presidential election in 2008, which set records. It's already 5 million more votes than were cast in the last presidential election. I only think the votes are going to go even higher as we get all, as was mentioned just before I came on, all those absentee ballots counted, especially in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. I understand that some folks have been taking a look now at those absentee ballots from Milwaukee in Wisconsin, and in fact Biden is apparently now up, but we'll wait to see what happens. We don't want to call anything. As Joe Biden said in his early morning talk to the American people and to the world, the president shouldn't call this election, Joe Biden shouldn't call this election, the American people should be the ones calling this election with their votes.
Absolutely. Amy, just a last question on expat voters. What are the biggest issues for people who live outside the United States who are American voters?
Well, one of them is that we have to register every year. There are a lot of states, unfortunately, that are trying to scrape voters off of the voter rolls. And so one of the biggest challenges for us is to remind Americans abroad to register. We try and get out that message every January. Just do it as a matter of course, every year, re-register to vote, even if you think, oh, no, my state won't do that, my county won't do that. Absolutely. Another is, of course, there have been some very interesting things happening in various states. As you know, each state makes its own rules for the election, and some states, as Pennsylvania, require a security envelope or a safety envelope, a privacy envelope. Other states have different things, and so each individual state, their rules need to be followed very, very specifically. And while we are intelligent folks who live abroad, as in the United States, sometimes people need to be walked through that process. And so through votefromabroad.org and through Democrats Abroad France and Democrats Abroad worldwide, we try and help people do that. So it's a matter of taking the rules and very specifically following them, because we don't want any of our votes not to be counted.
Absolutely. Amy, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. Amy Below, voting representative for Democrats Abroad. Thanks so much. So, Amy, they're talking about a lot of issues for expat voters. One of the big issues for many voters, whether it was expat or inside the United States, of course, was the issue of race relations in the United States and racism. 2020, of course, marked with a historic amount of protests. Those came in the wake